Transport Minister Anita Anand says she will not be running for the Liberal leadership and will not seek re-election as Oakville MP. She posted a statement on social media this afternoon, which reads in part, "Today I am announcing I will not be entering the race to become the next leader of the Liberal Party of Canada and will not be seeking re-election as the Member of Parliament for Oakville. I will continue to honourably execute my roles as a public office holder until the next election." Anand thanked Trudeau for his service and said his resignation showed her it is the right time for her to do the same. She says she'll return to her prior professional life of teaching and policy analysis. Meanwhile, CTV News has also learned former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney will announce his candidacy next week with the backing of dozens of MPs. For years, many insiders have considered him a potential successor to Justin Trudeau. To unpack more on this, I'm joined live now by CTV News political commentator Scott Reid. Scott, good to have you. Thanks for taking the time. Okay, I want to break Anita Anand's kind of announcement here into two parts. We'll start with her saying she's not going to run for the Liberal leadership. Are you surprised? Do you think she might have had a strong chance?
I'm not surprised in this circumstance. I think Anita Anand is another casualty of Justin Trudeau's, long and late decision to step down. So there's another world. There is a parallel universe where people like Anita Anand, who steady hands, safe minister, well-regarded and capable minister, would have launched a leadership bid, where Justin Trudeau stepped down 6 months ago and people had time. They could have signed up members. They could have raised money. Now, a bunch of those people look at this and they say, I got 6 weeks. I got to spend $350,000. I got to try to figure out how to possibly win this race and then enter an immediate general election. And so you're seeing people like Anita Anand, Melanie Joly, Dominic LeBlanc, all saying, sorry, I'm going to take a pass. And I think that's to the disadvantage of the party.
Just to follow that thread for a moment before we keep going with Anand's announcement, do you think that's the point of this? I mean, obviously, it's just a short window gap because of when Justin Trudeau decided to step down. But the price tag, $350,000, is that to kind of weed out some candidates?
It is for sure. It's not designed to weed out Anita Anand because she's regarded as a capable person who probably has a lot to offer. But it's definitely intended to weed out single interest groups who might say, let's use this leadership as an opportunity to influence who the next prime minister is. It's definitely intended to weed out the carpetbaggers and also-rans who are hopeless and distract from things. And so, given what the prime minister's left the party, for sure, they've created a set of rules that say, look, you're going to have to show up and show big, and you've only got 5-6 weeks to do it. And that's really narrowing the window for this race.
Okay, so now we'll get back to the Liberal leadership in just a moment. But following Anita Anand's announcement, I think what's really shocking, too, is her saying she's also not going to run for re-election at all as an MP. Were you surprised about that part?
I was a little surprised. I didn't necessarily expect it as a cabinet minister. But, again, if you take a look at the number of people that have been looking at the polls, looking at the circumstances, thinking about the private arc of their own personal life and political life, there's a bunch of people that are just voting with their feet and saying, I'm going to walk. I'm going to walk away from public life. I'm going to walk away from recompeting as a Liberal member of Parliament. Oakville's one of those really tough swing seats. It's very winnable for the federal Liberal Party when things are going well. It's very hard when things are going poorly. And I think you look at this and you have to say to yourself, the Conservatives are smacking their lips thinking we can gobble up Oakville now and we don't have to deal with an entrenched and well-liked member of Parliament like Anita Anand.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about some of the other possible contenders here for the leadership race as things get rolling. Sources saying, obviously, Mark Carney going to announce his intention to run next week. Thoughts on that? Are you surprised by that? I mean, we've kind of seen this coming.
Yeah, I mean, if last week was about resignation and rules, this week is going to be all about the starter's pistol. We're going to see big names enter this race formally. Carney's obviously going to come in. They want to do a little bit of shock and awe, lots of caucus members and endorsements. If they're telling us that caucus members are going to endorse him up to 30, then you can expect that the number will be bigger than 30. If they're telling us that he's going to be endorsed by a number of caucus members, expect to see other names as well. So they're really trying to establish him as a front runner in this short race, get some momentum, get some excitement, try to push others to the margin. I think there's at least 3 front runners in this race. Carney is very much trying to make a push for establishing himself as the sole front runner.
Okay. It sounds as though there are three, as you say.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think. Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, who we haven't heard from yet, and Christy Clark. Do you agree with that?
That's absolutely the
Yeah.
front runners.
Let's talk a little bit about Christy Clark then, because she's in a little bit of hot water right now after denying supporting Jean Charest in the Conservative leadership a couple of years ago. She's since backtracked on that. But I think it's interesting, the sticky situation she finds herself in before really this race even gets started. Is this good news for her? Or do you think she's kind of avoided the worst by going back on what she said?
It is precisely the opposite of good news. This is not the launch that she was looking for. And to be precise, she didn't deny that she supported Jean Charest. She was always very vocal and loud about her support for Jean Charest in the last race. What she denied, and she got busted on television in a real sort of made-for-TV dramatic moment where she challenged the interviewer and challenged the Conservative Party. And the assertion was, well, you voted in the last Conservative leadership race. She said, no, I didn't. And if I did, let them show me a copy of my ballot. And of course, boom, right? Perry Mason on the stand, Matlock slammed. Well, here's the ballot. We busted you. What I like about it, there's nothing to like about that moment, is that she owned it. Immediately on social media, she sent out a statement saying, hey, stuff happens. She didn't say stuff. And she just owned it. She said, I screwed up. I misremembered. Move on. Christie's campaigning skills, her pure appeal, her ability to compete as an outsider in this race of insiders, I think that's still going to leave her in good stead. I don't think her candidacy is over, but it is not the way you wanted to start. It was a real own goal and a real shot across the job.
Yeah, very interesting stuff there, too. Okay, before I let you go, Scott, obviously a big week ahead. Is there anything else you're watching for? Obviously, everyone's probably watching at this point to hear anything from Chrystia Freeland.
I think all three of the big players you're going to see if they enter the race. So Chrystia Freeland, Mark Carney, and of course Christy Clark, as we just discussed. So I think by the week's end, I'd be surprised if all three of them haven't thrown their hats into the ring. And then I'll be looking to see, is there much beyond that? There's a lot of talk around Jonathan Wilkinson, and here's the only reason that I think that's interesting. He might be the sole candidate who declares his support for the carbon tax. I think you're going to see all of these candidates come out and immediately distance themselves from the signature central public policy initiative of the Trudeau government, the consumer carbon tax. Wilkinson might distinguish himself as the sole person who says, I want to hug that honeypot. I want to cover myself in all that tar. And I think that'll be interesting to watch. Everyone else is going to run from that thing, knowing that is political kryptonite.
Yeah, and it will be interesting, too, to see how the Conservative Party reacts to that as well. So much to watch for. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you again very soon, Scott. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks a lot. See you soon.
That's our CTV News political commentator, Scott Reid, joining us live.